The founding fathers of the United States were clear in their vision for the new nation. They believed deeply in the right of the people to own and use firearms, even military-style weapons, seeing it as essential to liberty. This right was not something granted by the government or any authority. It was considered a natural right, endowed by our Creator, inherent to all individuals. The Second Amendment, therefore, does not grant a right to the people. Instead, it protects a pre-existing right from government infringement, ensuring it remains intact. Any attempt to regulate or restrict firearms is a direct assault on this fundamental right. The Constitution, and the Second Amendment in particular, was written to limit the power of the government over the people. It was never intended to limit the rights of the people, but to protect them. The Founding Fathers understood that a well-armed citizenry was the best defense against tyranny, both foreign and domestic threats. They knew that a disarmed populace was vulnerable to oppression and could easily be controlled. The Second Amendment is not merely about hunting or sport shooting, as some might suggest. It is fundamentally about the inherent right of the people to defend themselves, their families, and their property from any type of harm. It is about ensuring that the people have the means to resist tyranny, should it ever arise, and to maintain their freedom. Any attempt to restrict this right is a violation of the Constitution and a betrayal of the Founding Fathers' vision for a free and secure nation. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution is not ambiguous. It is a fundamental part of our nation's history and legal framework. It states, "A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, shall not be infringed." These words have echoed through the centuries, reminding us of our rights. This language is clear and concise, leaving no room for misinterpretation. It acknowledges the importance of a well-armed citizenry for the preservation of liberty. The right to bear arms is not a privilege, it is a duty to be armed and ready to defend your rights, your freedoms, your family, and your community. The Founding Fathers understood the dangers of a tyrannical government. They had experienced oppression firsthand. They had just fought a war of independence against tyranny. Their victory was hard-won and came at a great cost. They knew that the only way to prevent tyranny from taking root in America was to ensure that the people had the means to resist it. A well-armed populace was their safeguard. The Second Amendment was designed to be a safeguard against tyranny. It is a shield for our freedoms. It is a clear statement that the government has no right to disarm the people. The power lies with the citizens. Any attempt to do so is a violation of the Constitution and a threat to our freedom. Our rights must be protected. The Second Amendment is not open to interpretation. Its meaning is straightforward and unequivocal. It is a clear and unambiguous statement of the Founding Fathers' intent. They wanted to ensure that future generations would remain free from tyranny. It is a cornerstone of our liberty and must be defended at all costs. Our freedom depends on it. The right to defend oneself is not granted by any government. It is a natural right, endowed by our Creator. This right is enshrined in the Second Amendment, which protects our ability to defend ourselves, our families, our property, and our very way of life. This right is not limited to self-defense against criminals. It also encompasses the right to resist tyranny. The Founding Fathers understood that the greatest threat to liberty often comes from the government itself. They knew that a well-armed citizenry was the ultimate deterrent against tyranny. The Second Amendment is not about hunting or sport shooting, though those are certainly legitimate activities. It is about the fundamental right to protect ourselves and our loved ones from harm. It is about ensuring that we have the means to resist oppression should it ever arise. The Commerce Clause of the United States Constitution has been twisted and manipulated over the years to justify all manner of federal overreach, often in ways that the Founding Fathers could never have anticipated. One of the most egregious examples of this manipulation is the use of the Commerce Clause to regulate firearms, a topic that stirs intense debate across the nation. Originally, the Commerce Clause was intended to give Congress the power to regulate commerce between the states, ensuring a unified economic system. It was never intended to give the federal government the power to regulate every aspect of our lives, from the mundane to the significant. The use of the Commerce Clause to regulate firearms is a clear example of federal overreach, infringing on states' rights and individual freedoms. The manufacture, sale, and possession of firearms within a single state have nothing to do with interstate commerce, yet they are still subject to federal regulation. Despite this, the federal government has used this clause to justify a vast array of gun control laws impacting law-abiding citizens. The Commerce Clause was never intended to be a blank check for federal power, allowing unchecked authority over the states. It is time for the courts to rein in this abuse of power and restore the original intent of the Constitution, ensuring that federal authority is kept within its proper bounds. The National Firearms Act of 1934, or NFA, was the first major federal law to infringe on the Second Amendment rights of Americans. The NFA imposed a tax on the manufacture and transfer of certain types of firearms, including machine guns, short-barreled shotguns and rifles, and silencers. This law was passed under the guise of regulating interstate commerce, but its true purpose was to restrict access to certain types of firearms. The NFA set a dangerous precedent for future gun control laws. It established the principle that the federal government could regulate and restrict firearms, even if those firearms were not being used in criminal activity. The NFA was a significant infringement on the Second Amendment, and it paved the way for further restrictions on our gun rights. It is time to repeal this law and restore the full scope of our Second Amendment liberties. History is replete with examples of governments disarming their citizens and then committing atrocities against them. From the Ottoman Empire's disarming of the Armenians to Nazi Germany's disarming of the Jews, from Stalin to Mao, the pattern is clear. When a government wants to control its people, it first disarms them. Disarming of citizens has led to tens of millions of deaths worldwide in the last century. These examples should serve as a stark warning to us all. When a government seeks to disarm its citizens, it is not doing so for their own good. It is doing so to consolidate its own power and eliminate any potential threat to its authority. Gun control is not about safety or the gun. It is about control. It is about giving the government a monopoly on force and leaving the people defenseless against tyranny. The right to keep and bear arms is under constant assault. Anti-gun politicians and activists are relentless in their efforts to chip away at our Second Amendment rights. They use fear-mongering and emotional appeals to try to convince the public that gun control is the answer to our problems. Any and all gun control legislation is unconstitutional. Any politician trying to pass any such law is violating their oath of office. We must not be swayed by these tactics. We must stand firm in our defense of the Second Amendment. We must educate our friends, family, and neighbors about the importance of this right. The Second Amendment is not just about guns, it is about freedom. It is about protecting our life, liberty, and our pursuit of happiness. It is about ensuring that we have the means to defend ourselves and our loved ones from any threat, foreign or domestic. It is about preserving our liberty for ourselves and for future generations. Stay frosty, friends. Keep your head down and your powder dry.